This is Waves, a podcast from APTA Michigan. I'm Andy Wicks. We've said before that one of the beautiful things about physical therapy is the vast variety of opportunities and settings in which you can work. I have been a PT for over a decade, and I'm still learning about all the cool things my colleagues do. But today is a new one. Social media influencer and content creator at the intersection of comedy and running. We spoke with Dr. Laura Green, a physical therapist, runner, content creator, and funny person, to hear about her meandering journey from grad school that was just right for her.
My name is Laura Green. I am a content creator, mostly on Instagram, but TikTok, YouTube, in the run space. So it's a very specific niche world that I live in. But that's what I do, especially because it's comedy. So it's comedy in the run space. There's 3 of us total.
That means you've cornered a third of the market just like that.
I have. But I'm also a physical therapist, not practicing right now, but I have been since 2010.
Okay. So let's talk about that first.
Yeah.
About your PT career. So in what kind of clinical practice setting have you been as a PT?
Pretty much everything. So when I graduated in 2010, me and my best friend, Erica, jumped into traveling PT, which is not recommended by any professor to do right out of college. And I see why, because you're just thrown into the fire. There's very little orientation. But if you can handle it, and I hate to say fake it till you make it when it comes to healthcare, but there is a certain level of that.
Yeah.
As long as you're not endangering anyone, So we took it on and it was an absolute blast. And I think I actually learned so much more because of it.
I'm sure.
First, we went to Chicago and we worked at this horribly run state. I would call it a rehab, but I can't even describe it.
Wow.
It was so bad. And to the point where every day we were getting requested to essentially commit Medicare fraud, and we would say
God.
no. They'd be just put 8 minutes down, but they weren't. They were here for 3 minutes,
Yeah.
So you definitely run into situations like that, and you have to be just good and confident at holding your own and being like, no. So the job was terrible, but Chicago was a blast in the summer. So we had the time of our lives, and then we went to San Francisco where our jobs were a little bit better, but a lot of traveling PT jobs, at least at the time, were skilled nursing facilities. And so I actually thoroughly enjoyed that because I got into PT thinking I was going to be on the sideline of the NFL.
You and everybody else.
Yeah. You were just saying before we started recording, I got into it thinking I'm going to work with athletes. I'm a lifelong athlete. This is exactly what I know. But probably halfway through school, I was far more interested in everything else. I could care less about ortho. I thought it was painful and boring. And I found that. So I went to Northeastern University, which has an amazing co-op program. So you start seeing patients your sophomore year of college.
Oh, wow.
And so I realized, my first co-op, I went out to San Diego and I worked in acute care and I did wound care. That taught me a whole bunch and I loved the pace of the hospital. I learned really early that, your athletes are your whiniest patients and your younger demographic. They're going to be annoying and needy and they're going to require more from you as a therapist. Whereas my older demographic were just super grateful and appreciative and they wanted to participate. So I just loved them so much more.
That's so good. I love that.
The SNFs are typically not the most desirable place to work, but I actually did enjoy them for the most part. So we lived in San Francisco, and then we went and we traveled through India and Nepal. We worked at a hospital in Pokhara, Nepal, which technically we can't say we worked there because we don't have a license in Nepal, but we were volunteering. That was really interesting. Our patients all came in. They would ride the bus from the countryside hours just to come and get 5 minutes with a PT.
That's amazing.
And they would come in and the PT would give them 3 neck exercises. So a lot of the injuries were cervical, just chronic pain because they carry a lot of their loads on their back and it's through a strap that goes across their
Yeah.
forehead and
Yeah.
then the load comes down. So their neck is
Oh, yeah.
completely extended. And so it was just a lot of basic exercises that would be actually very difficult for them to keep up. So
Yeah.
part of me was just like pained by the whole thing because I was like, they're not getting anything out of this. A
Oh,
5-minute appointment with a PT that they traveled hours to get
that's
to.
amazing.
Most of the time we didn't know what was going on because we didn't speak the language, but we knew what was going on, obviously, exactly by reading body language and
Yeah.
such.
Yeah.
So the best thing about travel PT is that in between contracts, you have as much time off as you want or can afford. So
Yeah.
like a lot of times when you run out of money. We did like 4 months in Nepal and India and then came back. We went back to San Francisco because we liked it so much. And then I went to Alaska and I spent the summer in Alaska.
Jeepers.
I worked in acute care that also, actually, no, I worked outpatient in a hospital 4 days a week. And then 1 day a week, I'd be up in the hospital. That was really my only outpatient time. And it was really good because I worked with amazing therapists. So thank God, because I think outpatient is probably the hardest to just jump into after not doing it for so long.
Oh, for sure. I would be terrified going into an outpatient ortho clinic right now.
Yes,
Absolutely
and everything
terrified.
is so new and updated and the manual work and everything. I'm so out of, oh man, practice. That was a great experience. I had the best summer ever living in Alaska. It was such a ball.
Where in
Well,
Alaska were you?
Homer, it's the bottom of the Kenai Peninsula. It was like 3 hours south of Anchorage.
Okay. I interviewed Rachel German, who works on Kodiak Island.
That's very cool.
Yeah. And so we had a whole conversation about how she goes to, there's 6 villages on the island and she gets to one of them a month by bush.
Yep.
What a cool commute.
She's probably going to learn how to fly those planes soon. They all become pilots.
I mean, maybe. So.
Oh man, it's
Wow. Okay.
unbelievable. Or I guess I got my timeline wrong. Then we went to Nepal. I don't know. We kept coming back to San Francisco. I went to Boston for a little while. We went to Greece and Turkey for a while. And then when I came back to San Francisco, we got into home health. Erica and I both got into home health care and didn't leave because we just loved home health so much. We had the most flexible schedule. The pay was amazing. And so we were able to pay off. I had 50 grand in student loans. I paid it off within like 4 years. That's why like travel, you get paid more. I mean,
Yeah.
there are a ton of benefits of it.
You kind of breezed over the whole Greece Turkey thing.
Oh yeah, well we didn't work there. That was just a travel.
Okay.
We sailed the Greek islands.
Oh, it sounds rough. Sounds super rough. It sounds a little bit like you had kind of an Indiana Jones kind of PT career for a while.
I'm certainly not the person that professors usually want me to speak because it's pretty unconventional. But it also shows you can do whatever you want.
Those are the stories the students want to hear.
Yeah. You're taking a career that has a pretty standard path. You do this, and then you do this. And we found creative ways to make it fit our lifestyle. So
Yeah.
we got to travel internationally. We got to take long bouts of time off.
You have experiences that very few PTs have.
Yeah.
Think about that just in terms of not only seeing different parts of our country, different other countries, and what society is like. The fact that you saw what people in Nepal have to go through to get any kind of health care.
Right.
I mean, holy cow, that itself is worth the trip right there.
Yeah, definitely. And we worked in this house. The whole house was full of nurses from the UK, Australia, and they worked at the same hospital as us. And so
That's
we
awesome.
would come back to dinner every night and just chat about what we experienced because a lot of them were in the birthing ward.
Oh, wow.
I know.
That,
But it was pretty terrifying. We had to get on a moving van. The van never stopped to get to the hospital. Like the door would swing open and we would jump in. And that's how we got to the hospital. And then when we were done at the end of the day, we would come and sit in the van and we didn't know if it was leaving in 5 minutes or 2 hours. And it was like 100 degrees inside.
oh my gosh.
We would just have pools of sweat through our scrubs. But man, the Nepali people are by far just the most gentle and wonderful that I've ever experienced. So it was such a pleasure working there and offering anything that we could,
yeah.
which wasn't much.
If nothing else, it's also just a little bit of humility. I went to school for all this, but I don't speak your language and I don't understand your culture, and you're welcoming me here.
And I don't know how to cure you in 5 minutes. I wish I could give you one thing that would make you feel better. But I don't think I can
Oh my
even
God.
offer that. Yeah.
Okay.
And then what did we do? Erica stayed. She stayed in home health for a while. I bounced around, but for the most part was in home health. I came back to Boston. So my family's from the East Coast. And so I got sick of flying home for Thanksgiving and Christmas. So then I started doing East Coast winters, which is the opposite of
Yeah, no, I get it. I grew up in Minnesota. I know what that's like, I get
yeah. So you're just, I'm sick of paying this $500 flight. So I worked in Boston from October to January just so that I didn't have to buy those flights. Then I went
probably not a lot of people wanting
to
those gigs either, too.
Right. Yeah, totally. Yeah, then I went to Uganda, and my friend Kinley, who I went to PT school with Erica and I, had met this guy who set up a triage center in Uganda. The story is that he got malaria when he spent a long time in Uganda, and he got malaria and he almost died, called his parents. The people in the village saved his life. And so he kind of vowed, I'm going to save every last dollar I have and come back and help you guys out. And so he did. He lived out of his van in San Diego. He's a civil engineer, and he saved all of his money, and he started this triage center in this small village in
My
Uganda.
gosh.
Kinley is good friends with them, and so she went out and helped start it. I went out just for a couple weeks till I don't even know. I was just there for moral support. I brought out a lot of running gear. I brought out 3 huge bins of running shoes. So we held a race at the local high school, and
Oh, nice.
yeah, everyone got new shoes. That was pretty life-changing too. But yeah, then I came back to San Francisco, and then I was there for 6 years. And then soon after I met my now husband, and so then we both stayed there for a while. And then
Okay.
when I got pregnant with my first kid, we moved back to Boston. Kept working through the pandemic. I ended up back at the hospital because I felt like the hospital was cleaner than people's homes.
A bit ironic during the pandemic, but you're probably right.
Yeah, I took a few months off because we had no childcare, so I was with my son. And then when I went back to work, I went back at the acute care at Mount Auburn Hospital here in Cambridge, which was so fun. I just love the camaraderie of working in a hospital. I love the people that end up working in a hospital. It's just a
Yeah.
different breed of person,
That's a good way to put it.
especially through a pandemic.
Oh my gosh.
Who's working in a hospital?
Yeah.
You have to have a good sense of humor. You got to be tough as nails.
I imagine it's like the show MASH a lot of times.
Yeah, that was great. But the problem is I took a massive pay cut. When you are working in San Francisco, you're getting paid very well. When you come move back to Boston, you are going to take a 40% pay cut, and it is brutal. So I
Yeah.
just ended up going back to work per diem because I was like, forget this.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair.
Then I started different creative pursuits on the side, which then now led to this.
So here we are.
And here we are.
Wow, that's quite the journey, Laura. I'm not gonna lie.
15 minutes later, here
I was not expecting this to go through 4 continents, and I didn't expect that. But what a journey! I mean, how cool! The fact that you've made your career your own to truly fit you in a way that probably would fit no one else but you, and to fit your desires and personality and just where you want to be in life. Yes, Laura just magically reappeared in the new room. We got cut off. You were able to practice that entire time in all these cool settings. You saw so many cool things. I think that's kind of rad. One thing that I really want our students to kind of understand, that they can make this career kind of whatever they want it to be.
we are pretty quick to just kind of feel like we're kind of pigeonholed into one area. I remember having this very random conversation with a neighbor that I lived next to for 3 weeks in San Francisco, and she invited me into her home, and she had this beautiful apartment, and she had escargot. And I was like, what's happening here? She asked me all about my career, and I honestly, especially those first few years, just saw it as a job, as a means to an end. It pays me well. I can deal with anything, especially for a short contract. So as long as I'm comfortable where I am, I can do anything. But I could see myself going into academia. I could see myself going back. And she goes, I want to challenge you on that. She goes, there are more routes than just that.
Ooh.
She, I think, came from academia and something completely different. And
Yeah.
she goes, I don't know that the politics of that career path for you are where you'll excel. And this is someone who didn't know me, but I was like, wow,
Oh.
you're reading me like a fortune cookie. I actually thought about that for many times since that conversation 10 years ago. Because even though I was traveling around, I still had it in my mind that, okay, and then at one point you settle down and then you work here and then you teach. And I still am enamored with the thought of teaching, but right now that's just not obviously the path that I
Well, I would say, Laura, there are a lot of different ways to teach.
Yeah.
So
Especially
don't sell,
now. Yeah.
don't sell yourself short on not teaching. You might be teaching more than you think. Are you sure that woman was real?
Yeah, right. She's like an apparition.
I mean, kind of feels like it was this weird.
I mean, I lived
we
in
wa-
San Francisco, you know?
I mean, a lot of things are
what
possible.
happened?
You were actually living in the dumpster that whole time, and no, that was your Obi-Wan Kenobi moment, and now
Maybe.
So okay, so let's talk about what you're doing now, because you are a runfluencer. What I did
I'm a
there?
runfluencer. I know.
Did I make that up?
Oh, but it's
Oh, dang
actually
it.
like a legit thing.
I
It's
thought I was going to
cringe though. Yeah.
So I take it you've been a runner probably your entire life.
Yes. And then I ran in college.
How did you get into doing what you do now? I'll link to your accounts here, because if you're not familiar with what she does on Instagram and stuff like that, it's pretty freaking hilarious.
I don't really know how I got into it. Throughout all of this that I was working as a PT, I was also working with November Project, which is this free workout group started also by 2 Northeastern Huskies. I was on the track team throughout college. They were on the crew team. And
Okay.
so they started this free workout crew mornings that was volunteer run. And it basically was just to build community in whatever city it was in. And it started
Nice.
in Boston, and then it spread. And I led it in San Francisco for 5 years, and then was helping kind of manage it, because it's over 50 cities now. It's international and
Wow.
really, really cool. So I no longer work with them, but at the time it was another part-time job. I always had this creative branch, so I could do PT, but I always needed some type of creative outlet at the same time. And so for a while it was that. And then when I was done with that, I got into videography, and I went to the University of YouTube, and I learned so much. And I bought all the fancy equipment, and I was like, what am I interested in? And so I started going down the run path, but then I ended up doing legacy videos for a year. So as physical therapists, we are exceptional interviewers. It is something that we have all developed, and in one capacity or another, you have rapport with people, and you know how to make them feel comfortable. You know how to get the answers out of them that you're looking for. It is something that if you're practicing PT, it's a skill that you have. I was a podcast host for a little while over those years. And then I know that I'm good at interviewing people just from walking into a hospital room and figuring out what's going on and what's important, and also make them feel comfortable enough to tell me.
And having to do that in probably a short amount of time.
Yes. Yeah. People always ask, what do you talk to the high schoolers that want to be influencers? And my heart sinks a little. I understand why they want to be it. But no, the reason that I'm even a little bit good at this is because of all the years as a PT. But yeah, so I started interviewing neighbors, my father-in-law, and I interview them all about their life. And so these videos are 90 minutes to 2 hours, and you put me with all of these photos that they have. And it's a time capsule. It's something that their family members will have forever. And
Nice.
yeah, and it's a lot of work. So it was this really nice kind of passion project for me to do. And it was a creative outlet, and it was nice supplemental income for a year. And then I was talking to a friend while running one day, and I was like, something's just not right though. It's not fully filling me up. And so she was the one who, my friend Sasha was like, just do one comedy reel. Just do one. And I'm like, no way. I'm not going in front of the camera. That sounds horrific.
It's suddenly different when all of a sudden it's like you're trying to be funny.
Yes. Oh man. Most of my stuff is not funny. I just want it to be entertaining. But to think that I'm purposely putting stuff out so that people laugh, it's hard for me to even stomach. But yeah, I did too, and they did really well for what they were. And so I was like, oh. And then going back through November Project, we did have for a while, we were sponsored by the North Face, and then we were sponsored by Brooks. And so I had a few contacts in the run industry.
Yep.
And so I just emailed them, and I was like, you guys want to buy these? And they did.
Nice.
That's where it all kind of started to snowball. I learned how to price, and then brand started wanting me to travel. And so once travel got introduced, I stopped working at the hospital.
No.
Yeah.
I think from my own perspective of watching your videos, what I feel like is part of what makes them appealing, you're speaking to a population that you know very well. You are a runner and you're talking about running. So it's clear you get it. And I think you even have this on your website. It's self-deprecating humor.
I am the person that I'm making fun of.
Yeah, that's a kind of humor that I think allows people to see themselves in that without feeling like they're being made fun of. It's more like, I get that. I've
Yeah,
been that person. I've done
totally.
that thing in a way that
Yeah,
isn't.
that's always the goal is I just want people to feel like the jokes, even if I am kind of making fun of them, that they're in on an inside joke. And
Yeah,
people like that because it just builds community in the run space.
yeah. Because really, that's what you're doing, especially with the running community. I am not a runner. I have run in the past. I know how to run. I
Then
just,
you're a runner.
I,
You're just dormant.
yes, dormant. Yes, we'll use that term. I love it. I'm going to tell my wife that I'm a dormant runner. Did you know that? All you're doing is creating that sense of community within that running. Because again, it's stuff that people who are probably in the community are very active runners. They've dealt with whatever situation you are depicting in your video, and then laughing about it and recognizing that they're not the only one. You know.
Yes. Yeah.
So again, you're not practicing right now, and I'm guessing because you are becoming world famous, PT might be a part of your past.
No. You know what is nice? You can leave and come back. And so I've done it before and I'll do it again. I like having it there. It's a great profession to have in your back pocket. My mother is terrified that I'll never go back. You've renewed your license, right? Well, she has
That's
no
awesome.
concept of what I do for work.
Yeah, you could do it. You could do a PT, a running PT reel somehow. I don't know.
I
Know what that
could.
would look like.
And people who are especially RPTs are like, you need to tap into that because there's so much there. But
Yes, but
But I also do hesitate. The other day, I went onto Northeastern's campus and did
Mhm.
a TikTok and Instagram for their accounts just
Oh,
as like,
nice.
a fun little thing to do. And she goes, I have all these PT related questions for runners. And I go, I can't answer them. I'm not a physical therapist for runners.
Yeah.
I go to see chiropractors and PTs because I can't treat myself. I mean, I think all of us should do that anyways, but I can't diagnose half the things that are happening to my body right now
Yeah.
because I'm out of practice from that world. And so I don't pretend to be that. Of course, I have a higher baseline of terms of just sheer knowledge, but I'm definitely not like the running physical
Oh,
therapist.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And when people
There's
drop into my DMs with questions, I'm like, ice it.
see, rest, ice, compression, elevation. You feel like that still works most of the time. Well, hey, if you ever make it up to CSM is in Boston.
It is.
So I'm just saying, maybe you go to Boston, do some funny reels. Oh, that's super cool. On this podcast, we are very soapbox. We're very pro soapbox. So if you have a soapbox that you wish to climb upon and rant, you are welcome to do so, but you don't need to. This is not a requirement. This is simply an invitation.
What are people soapboxed about?
We get everything from social determinants of healthcare to student debt to income ratio to it's usually very PT
Are
specific.
your listeners mostly students or mostly like new grads or been practicing a while?
You know, it's a good question. Probably more students lately, simply because I keep telling my students about it.
Yeah, it's like extra credit.
Yeah, I haven't made it required yet, but that day might be coming. That's a good question. I honestly don't know the demographics of our audience that well.
If I were to soapbox about anything in physical therapy, humility is like a big, what we were talking about earlier. That's one of the most important qualities you could have as a healthcare practitioner. And just in terms of, there are so many areas of physical therapy. Get good at one, or do what I did and just be okay at a lot. No, I think
That might be okay.
it might be okay. I think just admitting that you are not the expert in all of them because you don't have to be. When people come in my DMs and they say, what do I do about my plantar fasciitis? Yeah, I can give you the basic information, but go see a PT.
Yeah.
But I'm a big advocate for pelvic floor PT, especially pre-birth and postpartum. It's life-changing, and I can't tell you the first thing about it. I took one class on it, okay?
I know I have a pelvic floor.
I have a pelvic floor. So I treat them like they are a different profession. Listen, I am a physical therapist, but talk to me like I'm not, because I want you to just like treat me like any other PT. I think that's actually really important, and you end up learning a lot more because of it.
Yeah, it's like you wouldn't go to your dermatologist about your broken bone. Yes, they are both physicians, but they do wildly different
Things. And so humility is big. Then it will help you, especially if you're a traveling PT, but in any type of PT, do not pretend you know everything. You have to have the humility to ask for help and go to a therapist and be like, I don't know what's going on here. Can you help me? It is an invaluable trait to have. It's never looked down upon. I think that we feel like we need to know everything from day one, and it's just impossible.
Yeah, I know. I definitely see that with students and new grads. The expectation of first, the expectation of there always has to be one answer,
Mm-hmm.
and whatever I say, it depends. Then I feel like I have to duck because they're going to throw something at me. But I think that recognition of there's so much pressure to get through school, get through the NPT, all that stuff, that then say later, I don't know, and I need to find out the answer, or let's find out together, kind of a thing, is a big change
Mm-hmm.
from just that's a big mindset change. So I'm glad you said that because I feel like that's an important thing to hear.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. That's my soapbox.
This is a great soapbox, Laura. Thank you. So I normally have a co-host, and she's gonna be really sad that she missed it because she's a pelvic floor therapist. She's
Yes. Well,
big
so
proponent of that.
very, very appreciative.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I'll let her know. Awesome. Laura, thank you so much for your time. This has
hey,
been
thanks
great.
for having me. I love talking PT. I always talk about running, so this is nice.
Dr. Laura Green is a physical therapist, runner, and comedic content creator based in Boston. Find her on social media at Laura McGreen or on her website, www.lauramcgreen.com. Even I, a dormant runner, as she so generously called me, find her stuff hilarious and entirely relatable. Waves is a production of APTA Michigan. It is co-hosted by Dr. Catherine Klein and me, Andy Wicks. Editing today by Chris Shoemate. Find us on social media at APTA-MI Waves or on our website, www.aptami.org/podcasts. Thank you for listening, and may your documentation always be done on time.